The tulips from that night still sat in the glass vase on the kitchen counter, their petals beginning to curl and fade. Sophie stared at them the next morning, wondering if Mark even remembered buying them, or if they were just a prop in whatever script he thought he was performing. She hadn't slept much after the wine bar. Her mind kept replaying the image of him leaning in close to the brunette, smiling in a way he hadn't smiled at her in months. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the intimacy. That kind of connection didn't happen overnight. This wasn't a mistake. It was something he had chosen. By sunrise, Sophie had decided she wasn't going to confront him until she had everything. Words, proof, patterns. She needed the full picture. She'd seen too many people in Maplewood jump to conclusions only to be branded dramatic or paranoid. Mark was charming enough to twist any conversation in his favor. She wouldn't give him that chance. The first step was to act normal. When Mark came down for breakfast, she greeted him with a smile. He laughed at something on his phone while sipping his coffee, and she found herself staring at that laugh. It used to be hers. Now it felt borrowed. Over the next week, Sophie quietly began gathering her evidence. She bought a small leather notebook and kept it tucked in her purse. Every time something felt off, a late-night text, an unexpected work dinner, a phone call he took outside, she wrote it down. Dates, times, details. She also began noticing things she had missed before. The way his shirt smelled faintly of cologne when he claimed to have been at the gym. The sudden interest in wearing new ties. The short, unreadable texts from a contact saved only as J. And then there were the laughs. That was the hardest part. Mark had a specific laugh when he was truly amused. A deep, warm sound that used to light her up inside. Lately, she heard it most often when he was on the phone, walking into another room, out of her line of sight. On Thursday night, Sophie stayed late at school, telling Mark she had paperwork to finish. Instead, she parked 2 streets away from their house and waited. At 7:43 p.m., Mark walked out the front door wearing a charcoal blazer she'd never seen before. He got into his car, phone pressed to his ear, smiling that same deep smile. Sophie followed. He drove to the same wine bar in Richmond. The brunette was already there, waiting at an outside table lit by soft string lights. Sophie watched from her car as they talked, laughed, and leaned toward each other like 2 magnets unable to resist. At one point, the woman reached across the table and touched his face. Sophie's breath caught. She didn't cry. She felt strangely calm. She lifted her phone and took a photo through the windshield, her hands steady despite the pounding in her chest. She didn't know it yet, but that was the first piece of her revenge. When Mark got home that night, he smelled faintly of red wine and the same perfume. He told her the networking dinner went well. Sophie kissed his cheek and told him she was proud of him. Her voice didn't even shake. But later, lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling and thought about how easy it had been for him to lie, how naturally the words seemed to come. She wondered how long she'd been living in a story where she was the only one who didn't know the ending. Saturday arrived with bright skies and the kind of cool breeze that made Maplewood feel like a postcard again. Mark suggested they go to the farmer's market. Sophie agreed. They walked hand in hand past stalls of fresh bread and local honey, smiling at neighbors who waved. To anyone watching, they looked like the same couple they had always been. But Sophie was listening, to the tone of his voice, to the pauses in his sentences, to the way he scanned the crowd as if looking for someone else. And then it happened. Mark's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his lips curved upward in a small, private smile. Sophie leaned just enough to see the screen. A message from Jay. It read, "Last night was perfect. Can't stop thinking about you." Her heart clenched, but she forced herself to laugh at something a vendor said. She didn't let him see. Not yet. That night, Sophie sat at her desk, the notebook open in front of her. She read over her notes, the times, the places, the small but telling details. The photo from the wine bar sat in her phone, the image clear enough to see his hand over the brunette's. She thought about confronting him now, about shoving the phone in his face and demanding an explanation, but that would end in shouting, in tears, in him twisting her pain into something she imagined. No, she wasn't going to let him write this ending. She would write it herself. For the first time since the wine bar, she allowed herself to picture what revenge might look like. Not screaming in the street, not throwing his clothes out the window. Something quieter, smarter, the kind of revenge that didn't just hurt. It destroyed. And as she closed the notebook, Sophie knew this was no longer just about heartbreak. It was about control. If this story gripped you, hit the like button right now. Share it with someone who loves an intense drama twist, and drop a comment telling me what you would do if you were Sophie. Don't forget to subscribe. Episode 3 is coming, and it will change everything.